The USS Forrestal Fire. On July 29, 1967, the aircraft carrier USS Forrestal was stationed in the Gulf of Tonkin off the coast of Vietnam. The massive vessel carried over 5,000 crew members and nearly 100 fully armed combat aircraft loaded with jet fuel and high-explosive bombs. To the crew, it was another intense day of continuous flight operations. Fully loaded jets lined up tightly along the flight deck, pilots strapped securely into their cockpits, and jet engines roared in the heavy tropical humidity. At 10:50 a.m., an electrical surge triggered an accidental missile launch. An unguided Zuni rocket accidentally fired from an F-4 Phantom, parked on the deck, shooting across the flight line and slamming directly into an A-4 Skyhawk loaded with external fuel tanks and heavy vintage bombs. Jet fuel sprayed across the hot deck and immediately ignited into a massive inferno. The fire spread across the crowded flight deck at terrifying speed. Because aircraft were parked wingtip to wingtip, pilots strapped inside their cockpits were suddenly engulfed in towering flames with nowhere to go. Some never had time to release their harness buckles. Horrified witnesses later recalled seeing pilots pounding furiously on their canopy glass, trying desperately to break free as flames consumed the cockpit around them. The Gulf Tank Incident. During the Gulf War in 1991, tank battles raged across the deserts of Iraq and Kuwait. It was the first time many soldiers saw how fragile an armored war machine could become once modern weapons struck its plating. To outsiders, a main battle tank looks virtually invincible. Thick steel armor, heavy cannon, and immense firepower. But inside, the crew is packed tightly together, surrounded by gallons of flammable fuel and dozens of high-explosive artillery shells. A single armor penetration can transform a multi-million-dollar war machine into an inescapable steel oven. On one scorching afternoon, a unit engaged a column of Iraqi T-72 tanks. These Soviet-built war machines were powerful, but their design possessed one fatal flaw. The autoloader ammunition was stored openly inside the main crew compartment, directly beneath the seats. If an enemy anti-tank missile or armor-piercing round penetrated the hull, it instantly ignited the entire explosive payload. Tank crews called it the jack-in-the-box effect. The sudden violent pressure spike would violently blast the massive multi-ton turret hundreds of feet into the sky, tearing the crew apart instantly. During the battle, one Iraqi tank was struck directly by an armor-piercing kinetic round. The initial impact did not kill the crew right away. Instead, a white-hot stream of molten metal and fire tore through the interior, instantly setting the compartment ablaze. Witnesses later recalled that the gunner survived the initial hit and was desperately trying to force open his overhead escape hatch. As intense flames engulfed his body, his frantic screams for help could be heard through the fractured hull. But the extreme heat had caused the steel hatch mechanism to expand and warp, jamming it shut. For several agonizing minutes, the trapped gunner fought against the inferno, pounding furiously against the jammed hatch, while thick black smoke poured from every crevice. Then, the main gun ammunition stacked beneath him began to cook off. Shell after shell detonated in rapid succession until finally the entire turret blew completely free from the chassis in a massive fireball. The tank was instantly incinerated, and everyone inside was consumed. The image of a man trapped inside a burning steel coffin, fighting for his life just inches from open air, haunted those who witnessed it for the rest of their lives. The tank incident proved that even the most formidable armor can suddenly fail and trap you inside. The Byford Dolphin Decompression Incident. On November 5, 1983, in the North Sea, a team of deep-sea saturation divers was returning from a routine maintenance operation on the Byford Dolphin drilling rig. Saturation diving requires men to live for weeks inside hyperbaric living chambers compressed to extreme underwater pressures. To survive, their bodily tissues absorb high concentrations of dissolved nitrogen gas. At 4 a.m., 2 divers were inside the pressurized living quarters, while 2 others were exiting the diving bell after returning from the seabed. The living chambers were connected to the diving bell by a heavy steel pressure lock clamped tightly by an external crew. The procedure required the internal hatches between the chamber and the bell to be completely sealed before the external clamp could be released. But as the divers were stepping into the living quarters, an experienced tender on the outside unexpectedly opened the clamp early while the internal pressure hatch was still slightly cracked. In less than a hundredth of a second, the air pressure inside the chamber plummeted instantly from 9 atmospheres down to 1 atmosphere. The sudden, violent drop caused explosive decompression. The air and gases trapped inside the human bodies expanded instantly with catastrophic force. Blood in the divers' veins boiled instantly as dissolved nitrogen rapidly flashed into gaseous bubbles, destroying their vascular systems in milliseconds. For the diver standing nearest to the opening hatch, the atmospheric pressure differential forced his entire body through a narrow 24-centimeter gap in the steel door.